Right, what's happening, people, and welcome back to the Joey Knight podcast. Now, I have got good news for you today because, as you can see on screen now, we have got Chelsea YouTube royalty, the main man, George Benson. I've been doing a couple of live streams recently, and a lot of you guys have been asking for me to link up with George and to do a video. Now, I'd love to link up with George, but it's hardly a train ticket away, is it? It's not the easiest with this man, is it?
It's not. Well, we're making it happen. And if you guys enjoy this, then we can make it a more regular thing. I think we all need each other right now, mate, don't we? We need to be in each other's presence. We need to bite each other's ears off. That sounds a bit weird, but chew each other's ears off in the footballing talkative sense. You know what I mean? But anyway,
we've actually tried quite hard to get this video going today because there's a lot of people, Josh Aveste included, who are very tech savvy. And I think that when you've got a successful YouTube channel, as both of us have, I think people would immediately think like, oh, you're a computer wizard and whatnot. We've had a struggle today, haven't we? We haven't got a fucking clue what we're doing with this sort of stuff, but I think it's going to work.
It's good. It's good that we're both pretty good-looking blokes, so that we can get away with it, even if the camera quality is quite low.
Well, there's one thing that's
scoot around it.
That's a good start to the video, anyway. So
that is
right, George. The first thing that I want to ask you, and in this video, as we've discussed off camera, we want to sort of give a bit of a mid-season review and see how life under Enzo Maresca is different to what we had seen under Mauricio Pochettino. I'm going to read out a few little stats for you just before we get going, and then I want your view on things. So I had a little look at the table after game week 23 last season. Now, we were sat 11th with just 31 points to our name. Your goal difference at that time, would you believe, was -1. Oh, no, that's mental, isn't it? As opposed to this season, we're sat 6th with a plus 15 goal difference. We're 1 point off Man City in 4th this season, whereas last season we were 13 points off Spurs, who were in 4th at this time last season. Fun fact for you, Spurs are now trailing us by 16 points, so that's something that we would be happy about.
We're having a bad season, aren't we?
We've obviously scored considerably more goals this season. We've conceded less goals than we did last season. How different does life feel under Mauricio Pochettino, or under Enzo Maresca, I should say, than it did under Mauricio Pochettino to you last season?
Do you know what? As I'm talking, I'm going to draw something that I'm going to show up to the camera, and it's going to show the difference between Pochettino and Maresca. I genuinely feel at this point, it's at that equilibrium stage where last season we started going on a bit of a run. So under Poch, we kind of finished really high. Under Maresca, we're kind of here right now. Like, that's where we are right now. Yep. Like, we started really high, and then we've just kind of... But it's gone downhill quite quickly. And I think recency bias in football can often say a lot about any fan. You lose 1 or 2 games in a row, and because we care about it, because we're passionate, it feels like the world's going to end. But I think it's the nature of what's happened this season, where you look at the progress that was made at the end of last season under Poch. And ironically, actually, mate, it was after the game that we went to together and we had that lovely meal and beers before. It was that Burnley game. And then after that, we started doing all right. Yeah. So maybe I should just come back and we go to West Ham together this weekend and we'll be absolutely fine and dandy after that. But I think we're at that point now where we seem to have regressed, and the issues that we're watching on the pitch are the same as when we were here with Pochettino, where our striker couldn't finish, where we had calamity after calamity at the back. We look defensively like we don't know each other. We look as if we're a bunch of strangers on the field. And amidst all of that as well, which is the most important thing, is it looks as though like the fight isn't there, which it just hasn't been there for some time, really, for the Chelsea squads in general. But I think we're at a turning point now where we're either going to go on a nice little run now, and this little period that happens to all teams, even Man City have had a shocking season. Now they're on the turnaround. Do Chelsea have it in us to actually turn it around that's what I'm hoping for now, but I'm not sure based on the recent performances and the lack of transfer activity, really. That's my thought.
I think we're learning a lot throughout the season as time goes on. So there's certain things, like at the start of the season, I was saying, I tell you what, Enzo Maresca, he's way less of a yes man than Mauricio Pochettino. He's came in, he's axed Sterling, he's axed Chilwell, he's ruthless, you know. And then as the season goes on, you start to look at it and you go, well, yes, he did do those things, but he's also sticking by Robert Sanchez. And the second that Petrovic had a good game for Chelsea Football Club under Mauricio Pochettino, what did Mauricio Pochettino do? He stuck with Petrovic and he made him his first choice number one. So I think that kind of levels that out. There's another argument. At the start of the season, there was a thought process behind the fact that we weren't picking up as many injuries. We had a lot more players available. And then you started to question, you started to go, I tell you what, Mauricio Pochettino was running these boys into the ground in training, and Enzo Maresca, he's doing a way better job at keeping them fit. And as the season goes on, you start to see, no, the injuries are really piling up, and our injury list is growing by the day. And not only that, no one, and I mean no one, can tell me that there are not at least 3 players every single match that are on that pitch that in an ideal world would not be on that pitch. Cole Palmer is playing with a knock. Caicedo is playing with a knock. And Enzo is playing with a knock. All 3 of those boys I've just listed are 1,000,000% playing through injuries at this moment in time. So completely of almost U-turned on my thought process that, you know, Mauricio Pochettino may have been one of the problems of Chelsea's injury list, and that's one thing I've learned. But at the same time, I want to give credit to Enzo Maresca, and I want to say that one of the things that I feel is that we are a bit harder to beat under Enzo Maresca than we were under Mauricio Pochettino. Like, I look at certain games, right? I think the 1-0 win away at Bournemouth, you know, the 2-1 win against Brentford just before we went on this bad run of form, the 1-1 draw with Arsenal at Stamford Bridge. I believe that they are all games that under Mauricio Pochettino we would have probably lost last season.
I think I agree.
And even in this run, right, if you look at this this bad little run we're going on now, do you remember under Mauricio Pochettino we went on that sort of abysmal run around the Christmas period? It was a very similar time actually to now. We went away to Wolves and lost, and then actually Wolves came to Stamford Bridge and won. And that run of form, we lost 5 out of 9 games. That was probably our worst run of form during that season, although we were very, very patchy at the same time during that season. However, this run of form we're on at the minute, and this could get worse, so you know, it's to be continued. But this run of form we're on at the minute, we've only actually lost 3 out of our last 9 games. So I think those stats would point me in the direction that we are a little bit harder to beat under Enzo Maresca. Would you agree with that, or do you not really buy into that as much?
I think I've got to agree, purely based on that goal difference point. Like, we've not really been battered at any point this season. Like, Man City wasn't really a battering. They were just, they kind of just, like, they had one engine going and they just, like, rolled over us and backwards a few times. Like, it wasn't really like a steam train going through us, you know. Like, we just rolled over and let them tickle us a little bit and gave them 3 points basically. But I think a lot of the problem that I think this is just a theory that I've had that I've not actually said out loud before, so you're gonna get it here first, and it might just sound nonsense, but like, when you sign all of these like young players who have grown up in the phone age where fashion is more important maybe than playing, where ice baths and staying late for training isn't the priority of the player. The moment Chelsea can't win, I feel like the whole idea of how hard we try just goes down, whether that's in game or even the season as a whole. I think when you've got that kind of negative mindset of, oh, well, you know, we're not in a title race anymore. That briefing was bollocks, by the way. When we could have beaten Everton and then gone top of the league, for everybody to be saying inside the club, oh no, we can't win the league. Shut up. Like what
Yeah.
that, you know this. If you go into a fight and you're like, oh, bloody hell, he's a bit bigger than me. Bloody, hey, look at him in his training videos. Well, you're putting yourself in a downward position already.
Yeah.
You don't walk into a fight thinking, no, I'm just going to knock this guy's face off. Why on earth is it okay for Chelsea Football Club to have our manager going into press conferences belittling our chances in a season where Man City have fallen off, Arsenal have been bang average for the most of it, Liverpool have got a new manager, they've gone on a good run, but who's to say it's all going to fit in? If they get some first team injuries, they could have fallen off too. So I think there's an element in my head, which obviously there's no proof of this, but the moment that the top gold isn't available, these youngsters just don't care anymore. It's like, oh, well, we can't get it anyway, or oh, I want the shiny trophy and I want the medal. We can't get that. All right, well, let's just give up a little bit. We roll over so many times. The foot goes off the gas. Like Chelsea of old, we'd have been 1-0 up, 2-3 by half time, and then Sunderland, Wigan, and Villa can tell you this. We'd have 7 or 8 by the end of the game.
Yep.
Like, what's happened? What has happened to that, like, cutthroat, brutal mentality where we're just going to go there and just score and pummel teams? Where's that gone?
See, this is where I find it hard though to blame to blame Enzo Maresca this season, because last season there was a very distinct trend, and it stayed the whole way through the season, by the way, until the last 9 games or so. I think you're right in saying after that Burnley match is when it really started to change. But last season there was a very distinct trend that we were worse in the second half than we were in the first half. Now this season, up until about the 15-game mark or something like that, I wasn't seeing that. I wasn't seeing us being worse in second halves than we were in the first half. So I think that I was coming out and my assumption was, God, Enzo Maresca's given a really good team talk there, and he's done some good adjustments in the changing room in that 15 minutes because we've come out, we've been better. Then it looked like we started to drop off, and then obviously in matches, you know, coming off the back of the last match was awful, but against Wolves, we did get way better in the second half. And one thing I would say is that although we're not creating as much in the second half, we're definitely creating enough that if we were a bit more clinical in front of goal, we should be seeing these matches out. There are games, for example, like the Fulham game. I actually think our worst performance of the season was probably against Everton, you know, in that 0-0 draw. I thought that was where we just looked. It was like watching paint dry. That was an awful game. But I feel like in some of the games that we've lost, in the game against Ipswich, in the game, you know, against Fulham, I kind of feel like, yeah, the manager will always take the blunt, but if the manager is who you treat as being responsible for the man who creates the system that brings the opportunities, he's not on the pitch to put the ball in the back of the net. And then you have to go, well, did we set ourselves up in a way that allowed us to create opportunities? I believe we did. I do believe we did. Now, Enzo Maresca has benefited from a lot of the foundations that Mauricio Pochettino put in place, the storms that Mauricio Pochettino had to weather, and the mid-season adjustments or the late season adjustments that Mauricio Pochettino made himself. The inverted fullback was something that I believe only really came in towards the back end of the season under Mauricio Pochettino. And when it happened and it worked really, really well with Cucurella. And it's something that was always going to be carried on because it was something that Enzo Maresca did at Leicester consistently throughout his whole time there. So it was always going to be carried on. But it's something that, as I say, has worked well for him, right? I wonder now if there's a world where we really do gamble somewhat. And, you know, we spoke about the transfer window. I think me and you both agreed that there's not going to be much movement in terms of incomings in this transfer window. Do you think there's any possibility that we start to change the system and change the formation? Because imagine a world here where, you know, we can have the three sort of centre backs as being Reece James, Trevor Chalobah, Levi Colwell.
I like this, Joey.
At the minute, they're all fit, right? Then we look over and we go, okay, Cucurella, left wing back rather than inverting. And let's be honest, mate, he's playing as a fucking left winger anyway. He's playing wherever he was fielder. He's got a free role, Cucurella, right? Malo Gusto, bombing up the wings, great delivery. He's probably been one of the most unlucky players this season to not be given the amount of minutes that I feel like he maybe deserves. Then you've got Caicedo and Enzo in there, Romeo Lavia if he comes back. I think there might be an option, maybe possibly against Brighton in the cup game coming up, definitely in the next set of matches in the Conference League, where we start to look at maybe trying out a little bit of a different system and see if it injects a bit of life into Chelsea? Or do you think that's a big gamble at this point in the season to make?
I think we've had such good history with playing three at the back that anytime things go wrong, I'm like, do it. Just show me. I think it's great for Reece in terms of protection for him, which I want to see Reece James on the pitch. I think he's one of the only players that like have been here long enough that just know what Chelsea's all about. So I think that's protection for him for a start. I think you could also have Neto potentially as a right wing back as well as Gusto, depending on how Cucurella would play in that system. If he would still want Cucurella to not necessarily be naturally out wide and maybe Cole will like occupy that left space on like a more traditional left back a little bit more. I actually think it would be really exciting. I think it would give teams that we're playing against a lot more to worry about than right now. It's quite obvious where Palmer's going to be. He's going to be lurking around the box. So if you double up on him, it's fine. And we mentioned this on the video on my channel as well, talking about how Felix and Palmer could both play together and put Palmer out wide a bit more. But I think if you give Palmer that free reign, but then also have those overloads out wide, I think at the moment, Chelsea have just become a bit predictable. I think bringing it back to my flipping unbelievable drawing, like it's just like where we are now is because teams have found us out. And what Poch did last year was be like, all right, well, we've been found out here. We've been shit. Like, I'm going to lose my job. Concede 5 goals against Arsenal. Doesn't lose his job, luckily for him. And then he can save grace at the end because he changed it. Because we made a tactical difference to alter the side to make us difficult to play against. So I think when you look at the teams that we've been losing against and dropping points against, you and me could say to any single bloke who's a Chelsea fan or woman, like, should we be losing those games? No, not really. We've been found out. So I think a three at the back would be an unbelievable thing to try. The difficult thing is, like, apart from the Conference League, all the games are tough now. Even Brighton away in the FA Cup is not easy. And if we go out of that, it's like, oh, we're out of the cup. Brilliant. So I don't know if Maresca will do it.
It's funny you say that in terms of being predictable, right? Oliver Glasner said it before the Crystal Palace match. He said, you know what Chelsea are going to do. Chelsea aren't a hard team.
That's the worst thing a manager can say about us. That's the worst thing any other opposition manager could say.
I'm so offended, and I thought, right, we're going to go and absolutely bump you lot now that you've said that, and obviously didn't really transpire to what I wanted to happen in that game. But I definitely think that a change of system might be something that we look at. I think that actually one thing that I've got to give Enzo Maresca here is, I mentioned earlier on in the video about the fact that, you know, he's benefited a lot from the fact that Pochettino's laid these foundations. You're basically playing with the same team, but the only difference is now they are a team rather than a random bunch of players that have been thrown together, don't really know each other. And obviously, like any relationship in life, right? If you and your missus have been rosy from day one and nothing's ever gone wrong and whatever, you're probably not going to have a stronger bond as you might have if you had have gone through hard times and hardships together and whatnot, because that creates sense of community and just a lot more sort of closeness and whatnot. So I think that the hard times that we suffered under Pochettino has definitely benefited us this season under Enzo Maresca. But what I actually found quite interesting is...
It's the philosophy channel, link in the description, by the way.
Yeah, there we go. The starting 11s, right? Pochettino's last game, I was at. It was the one where Caicedo scored basically from his own half. Pochettino's last game: Petrovic, Chalobah, Silva, Badiashile, Cucurella, Caicedo, Gallagher, Madueke, Palmer, Sterling, Jackson. Now you look at our last game, right? Robert Sanchez, Reece James, Chalobah, yes, he's in there, but I'm going to sort of write that one off because he's literally just come back and he's been batting the whole season. Colwell, Cucurella, Enzo, Caicedo, Madueke, Palmer, Sancho, Jackson. Now, there are quite a few notable differences in that team. So, Maresca hasn't literally had the exact same team that Pochettino had, and quite a few of the core players that you're seeing in there haven't been available for large chunks of the season. For example, I listed Reece James there, but he's not really been there. Trevor Chalobah has been out on loan all season. So I do think that as much as I give credit for the foundations that Pochettino laid, I do think that we need to look at it and go, well, no, Enzo Maresca's still had a job on his hands to gel players together and to get them playing together. My thought process on it is I feel very, very similar to yourself in terms of the graph you drew. Started really well, and now it's started to plummet a little bit. But in my heart of hearts, and I am an eternal optimist, but in my heart of hearts, I honestly do believe that Chelsea, regardless of what we do in this transfer window, will get a run together. I do think that if we get a good run together and we have a period of 12 games or so where, we limit the losses to only maybe one defeat or something like that, and we can grind out results, I think that we've done such good work at the start of this season that we're going to be able to definitely crack those top 5 spots, which I think with a coefficient will get us Champions League football. I think that it's not beyond the realms of possibility we still finish as high as 3rd. You never know what's going to happen in this season. And I think
you hit the nail when you said grind it out.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Can Chelsea actually grind it out? If anything, we do the opposite. Like we're in a position where we're 1-0 up, and you'd like to look at that. And when you read out that lineup there, I'm like, Reece James is a good enough defender. Chalobah's a solid defender. Colwell, recently not been so great, but he's a good defender. Cucurella is unbelievable. Like, how can we not grind things out? Caicedo is an unreal ball winner, interception, tackler. How can Chelsea not grind out results? Why do we throw away lead after lead? And I literally think that's, I don't know if that's it's not even a Maresca fault thing, like at all. I don't think it is that. I think it's purely a mentality issue with the players just not having the belief in togetherness yet to be able to do it. Like they've got to learn how to protect a lead.
We did a video on your channel, gets linked in the description, so definitely check that one out. And there was a point you made in there about, is Enzo Maresca trying to somewhat send a subtle message to the board with his substitutions, lack of substitutions sometimes, how late they're coming in, saying, I don't trust these players that I've got on the bench. And what I would say is when you ask, why are we throwing away these leads? Why are we not able to grind out results? Well, to grind out results, sometimes you need fresh legs on the pitch. Sometimes you need to have a game that in the 60th minute, you go, right, now I'm going to chuck on and Andre Santos, who obviously is out on loan at the moment, who we haven't got the availability to. Maybe, there's certain decisions which at the start of the season I didn't mind, but now I'm kind of looking at and I'm thinking, should Chilwell not have some sort of involvement? Should Chilwell not be an option for, even if you're not going to play him in the Premier League, should he not be an option for some of the Conference League matches and whatnot? Because that's a player that has experience that if you were to chuck on in the 60th minute when you're trying to protect a lead, for example, I think would benefit us. Kane Chukwuemeka's getting nowhere near the team. I think that's a player that you could chuck on that would be able to benefit us somewhat. A strange one. A strange one is Renato Vega going out to Juve on loan. I think that if you're leading a match by 1 goal in the last 10 minutes and the other team are piling on the pressure, a Renato Vega who's an aerial presence and who doesn't mind getting stuck in would be a perfect player to bring on. So I think that a lot of the problems lie at boardroom level rather than with Enzo Maresca himself. I am still confident we've got a good coach in there. I'm confident we've got a coach that is going to be able to very much ride the storm, grind out results as the season goes on. However, the only one downer I'd put on it is when I speak about this run that I feel like we need to go on. We need to go on a bit of a run, right? When I speak about that run, the time to have that run would have been these last few games. Because these last games, these last 5-6 games, they all looked very, very winnable.
And a lot of them in those games too, we could have actually like taken that game by the scruff of the neck, and within like 15-20 minute periods, like we could have saw Fulham off. We had so many chances against Ipswich, but like I feel like it was just a fluke game. But like all of those games, we had moments, which is why I agree with you. I back Maresca. And I don't just think, oh, championship coach, just because we've gone on a bad run. I'm not going to start spewing that out. But just, you can't, it can't be acceptable that this has happened. But also, like we said throughout this video, you've got to be willing to change it. Don't be stubborn now, because the more stubborn you are, the more people start to think, well, we're not even going to blame Jackson anymore. Let's blame Maresca for not just giving Mark Guillou a shot. Because you know as well as me, the kid is going to work his socks off. He's going to get everywhere. So if Jackson ain't doing that, which was what he was really good at, we knew he couldn't finish sometimes. Not saying all the time, but a lot of the time his finishing is the letdown point. Yeah. When he's not doing any of that, bring Guillou on. Give him a run. We know you don't want to do it in Kunku. He's going to get sold. So
the main one he's dying on his sword with is Robert Sanchez. Because I'd understand, right?
How have you managed to talk about him again?
I know. If Robert Sanchez had been bought in for Kepa Arrizabalaga money, yeah, I'd understand it. You know. When Mykhailo Mudryk was bought in for big money, I think that there would have been a pressure on Pochettino to give him a run of games from the board. And I think that Pochettino actually didn't. And maybe that's one of the reasons why he mutually sort of left the club in the end, because he was a little bit more reluctant to go with what the board were telling him at times. However, Robert Sanchez was not brought in on huge wages, and he was not brought in for huge money. It baffles me as to why Jorgensen hasn't started. And if there's one thing, I said I'm in support of Enzo Maresca already. I definitely am. If there's one thing that would make me be able to devote my entire support to Enzo Maresca, it is if we see Jorgensen in between the sticks against West Ham when we play them. Yeah. If that happens, then I will very, very much be in line of thinking, right, okay, this guy has got it figured out now, and he understands now. So I think that that's key. Let me get some final predictions off you, mate. End of the season. First off, do we finish with some silverware?
Yes, we do. I think we win the Conference League. If we don't, that's a crime against humanity. And I think if we beat Brighton and then get a decent draw in the 5th round of the FA Cup, I always back Chelsea in the FA Cup. I don't think we'll win it, because I still don't think we can beat the big teams. Yeah. But I think we'll win the Conference League. So the answer to that question is yes.
Okay. Another question that I haven't prepped you on, right? The last time we got a win over a Man City, a Liverpool, an Arsenal, or back in the Tuchel days, right? Unless we draw Man City in the cup, the opportunity of getting a league win against them is out the window now. But, you know, we could draw them in the cup. Do we get a win over one of those 3 sides this season?
No. Unfortunately not. And I think I know where the next question is going to be too. Do you think you're going to ask me about top 4?
Where do we finish in the league this season?
Bugger. Based on everything we've just said, like, you actually make me feel a bit better about it. I think we're going to go on a run again. I think we're going to finish 5th. Because I do think we've got good enough players to turn it around. Villa have obviously got Champions League football as well, which that's only going to get harder. Newcastle, I don't think can sustain. Forest, I don't think can sustain. I think it will be Liverpool, Arsenal, City, Newcastle, Chelsea. So 5th. That's what I think.
I think we're going to finish 4th. I think I'd agree in the top three.
Yeah,
the top three order. I think it's going to be Liverpool. I think that Manchester City, people think I'm mad. I think that Manchester City are going to finish within a couple of points of Liverpool. I think their goals doesn't bam right up. Yeah, I don't know why. I can just see it happening. It's very boring, very predictable. But I think that if there's any team in the league this season, you'd say Liverpool. But if there's a team that can put a 13-game winning run together, it's always going to be Man City, regardless of the lack of Rodri this season and whatnot. So I think they'll finish 2nd. I think Arsenal finish 3rd, and I think Chelsea will finish 4th. And I think that, you know, as much as we look at the fact that I say that some boys are carrying knocks at the minute, and, you know, oh God, an injury to Caicedo could absolutely kill off our season. At the same time, touchwood, that doesn't happen. At the same time as saying that, the likes of Romeo Lavia, if we can get him fit, available, playing games and whatnot, Nicholas Jackson, he's getting the opportunities, and you do see that he's got that bit of brilliance in him, and I think that his conversion rate will go back up. And I also just think that, you know, Enzo Maresca will accept at the end of this transfer window that ship's now sailed, and now I'm going to start to change things a little bit, and I'm going to start to put a spin on things, and I do think that will happen. I think we'll go on another run of form. I think that form's temporary, class is permanent, and we've just got too much class in there to not be able to finish above some of these teams that are just about outdoing us at this moment in time. And one thing I said it in your video, check it out, it's linked in the description. At the end of the season, I've never known an end of the season when it doesn't become silly season and it looks like no team wants those Champions League spots. Villa start losing. Season's gone by, they won't be near it this season, but Spurs start losing. Man United start losing, you know. And I do think that the likes of Newcastle and Nottingham Forest and Villa himself, they'll all start to accumulate losses as it gets towards the end of that season. So I think that Chelsea are hanging in there. We're benefiting from the good work that we've done earlier on this season, and I back us to finish 4th still, but listen, it's all up in the air.
I think this eternal optimism is great, mate. I think you've nailed that. You've made me believe now. I'm a fan. I like that.
Here we go.
I love it.
Let's not leave it too long before we do another one of these again.
100%. Let's do it. Let's recap on it in about 5 weeks, I reckon. In 5 weeks' time, we can look back on this. We can look back at some of the points we've made, and we're either vindicated with the bad things, vindicated with the optimism. We don't know what's going to happen. It's football. It always happens this way. But I think we're going to be all right, mate. Let's do that.
What time is it where you are?
It is nearly 6 p.m. It's just getting dark outside.
Right, well, I'm going to go and have my breakfast, and you can maybe go and have a beer.
Thanks for staying up early for me, or getting up early for me. Appreciate it.
No worries at all. Big shout out, George's channel, linked in the description, and the video that we did on there. Subscribe if you're not already. I will see you all in the next one.